Hello, everybody. Good morning for those of you where it is morning, and welcome to this EUA webinar on clean technologies. That is, of course, a huge topic once we talk about sustainability in general. It is a topic when we talk in society at large. How do we make societies sustainable? Much of the energy discussion is, of course, focused on technologies. Think about windmills, solar cells, heat pumps, etc., etc. And also, if we look at it here from Brussels, where EUA is, there is this idea that the Green Deal, or as it is now, sustainable prosperity and competitiveness, will be helped by technical means. It's a growth strategy where we will innovate ourselves out of the current imbalance. And of course, universities, and I'll come back to that in a moment, are a key player in this and perceive themselves as a key player in this. So today we have brought together a great panel with different angles on this topic. We're going to have a debate between the panelists, but I hope certainly also between the panelists and you in the audience. So before we go into the content, I would just point you to how things work in this platform. We have the chat, which I can see some of you are already using to say good morning. That's great. We also have the Q&A, as you can see. There you can have questions from the very start. So don't wait when you hear the speakers at the end and raise your hand. Just write them there when they come up. You can also vote for questions, and that's very helpful here on our side for the moderation, so we can see what is interesting for you, and to put that question up if we're short on time for questions. So that's the more technical part. I also have to say that the webinar is recorded. It will be on YouTube afterwards. And so if you're uncomfortable with that, then you're informed. Good. We'll start out with a little bit of interactive material here before I show some of the slides with a small poll, if that's okay for the technicians afterwards, saying whether you think the most important contribution to sustainability is from universities. Is it A, developing alternative sustainable technologies? Is it providing data, raising awareness, presenting alternative visions for society at large, or is it the education of experts? So let's just see where that lands and leave it for a moment. But it's a little bit different than what I would have thought. The education part is far ahead, but followed by the topic of today, the sustainable technologies. And I don't know, fair minorities about the providing data, sort of the Earth observation, etc., awareness. And then, let's say, an interesting and radical minority, and I think that we can come back to, definitely presenting alternative visions. So saying this is, universities is not only about having short-term solutions or technical solution, it's more of a visionary thing. So I'll just leave it a little bit longer to see if these things stabilize, but I think we are close to. a good number of people having responded. Yes, thank you very much. And I think also for our panelists, that is an interesting thing to bear in mind. So our audience, it's about education, then technology, and then those let's say sizable minorities that look at other things. So just to introduce very shortly, and then we can get on with our experts. The people that we have today is our first panelist is Stella Zani. That's spelled wrong. Sorry about that, Stella. As you can see here, lead author for the UN Global Environment Outlook, but also a recent winner of the European, to get it right, the European Sustainable Energy Award in the Women category. So congratulations for that. Stella, we have Carla Sattel, who's a senior advisor for carbon removal partners, but also professor of innovation and strategy at the Munich University of Applied Sciences, and very broadly acquainted with both the industry, investor, and innovation side. And lastly, we have the institutional aspect from Cornelis Bloch, lead author of several IPCC reports, chair of Technical Council Science-Based Targets Initiative, and professor at Delft University in the Netherlands. And Cornelis will, let's say, focus on the institutional part. But let me just, as a start, look at some basic evidence. So as I said before, in Brussels, much of the sustainability discourse and policy discussion is about sustainable innovation. And there is an index, the European Eco Innovation Index, that shows that these things are going upwards. We have more and more ecological innovation. Now, is this means that all innovation in Europe is about sustainability? Far from it, if you read other reports. But it is a topic that's definitely important for European innovators, and it goes forward. And if you look at what we have said at EUA, this is a report from 22 about innovation, and you can see what is university contribution in innovation for the sustainable transition, and it's the technological part is by far the greatest one, and much bigger than things like, for instance, changing behavior. And you can download that whole report. It's quite an interesting read. I'll put the QR code there. A more recent report, a very recent report, actually, just from within a couple of weeks, where we looked at greening in general in European universities. You can see that if you look at universities overall, what do they do for sustainability? Their research and innovation is there, among other things, that universities do, but generally they do a lot of things. I've highlighted here also knowledge valorization as something that at least half universities, and these are quite robust numbers. This is, I think, respondents, more than 400 respondents. Half of them have some activities, and a good 20% is really systematic with a specific policy process. So I think those are just some baseline data that what we see universities being fairly committed to this in terms of innovation, having it as a high priority, the technical innovation for sustainability, and that fits in a larger European context where this is going forward. So for the future, of course, if you're interested in this, we have a spotlight on sustainability in this year until April, and you can follow us on these various places. the website and the various social media of EUA. So with that being said, I will just jump directly to the panelists for a short introduction on their main thoughts. And I'll start with Stella. So, and we don't think we need my slide for that either. Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Thomas. Just a confirmation that you can hear me and you can see me well. Good, great. I'm connecting from outside Europe, so if you see any technical issues, just let me know, and possibly if I turn off my camera, the sound may be better. So very, very happy to be with you. Very excited to join this discussion in very challenging times when it comes to academia, academic research, and the scientific work done within universities and the importance of this work. I'm privileged to join this discussion while I'm also in Egypt attending the Inter-Academy Partnership Triennial Conference, where scientists and academia leaders from all over the world are joining discussions and teamworks to address the pressing challenges that have to do with sustainability transition from a socio-economic and technological perspective. And this gave me, although I had different things in mind to address in my intervention today, this gives me a very up-to-date and constant changing ideas and inputs for my contribution in this panel. And I would like to focus on a couple of things that, in my mind and in my view, show the real value of universities, European universities, that extends their contribution and their value beyond what is expected from universities. And as we can see from the responses in the polls, probably most of us relate higher education institutions with training purposes and education of experts. I strongly believe that the role of universities expands well beyond that, and in the current times it should expand beyond that, because researchers, academics, and science people that engage in academic activities, whether it's training, whether it's research, have this privilege of having a bird's eye view on technological, on social, on policy-related aspects. And this bird's eye view, it's very useful right now that we need to address issues that span and go beyond the borders of one discipline or one perspective. So my short contribution in this discussion aims at highlighting exactly this, that academic institutions are not here just for the education in one field, are not here just for the addressing of skill requirements or preparation of the next generation of experts, but are here to provide meaningful science-based contributions to addressing current polycrisis with an interdisciplinary perspective. Why we are well positioned to do so? Because we do research, we make use of the latest scientific advancements, of the latest scientific evidence to feed our projects, whether these are research projects or whether these are education and training projects. We do this with the use of data, so any kind of evidence that is coming from the academic institutions makes use of different data sources, of complex data, of multi-source data that can really be used not only to develop scientific breakthroughs and scientific advancements, but also to develop targeted awareness-raising initiatives and efforts. And of course, because we have this privilege of working with data coming from different disciplines, from different fields, because we have this ability to directly talk and connect with different views within our institutions and within the society and the economic system that we live. So we have very good access to different disciplines, and we have also very good connections with the business community and the policy making. So in this respect, we can we are very well positioned to develop alternative visions of the future. And by default, our work requires exactly this ability of ours, and gives us the time to look at where we want to go as a society and as an economic system, and to develop different visions and different pathways to get there. So if we are the ones working on these different perspectives and alternative visions of the future, we are also well positioned to describe in simple words to non-experts these alternative visions. This is something that we do within our classrooms, and this is something that we can serve fairly well and in a very consistent and credible manner for the entire society. So I really believe that the universities are well positioned to address all these different functions. Now, do we manage to do this? Do we manage to serve these functions equally well? My, let's say, optimistic view is that yes, we can. And I can address this and I can support this argument from the perspective of the young researchers that are entering academia and are serving the universities, and especially the European universities. What is required right now from young researchers is to be excellent performers in many different fields, whether it's communication of science, whether it's the delivery of great scientific breakthroughs and ideas, whether it's the engagement with the society and policy making. As I said, I'm now in a process that serves exactly this function of ours, the communication with peers and also the communication with policy making for the greater for the greater good. So I'm really confident and I'm really optimistic that the European universities, and not only those universities but also beyond Europe, are being staffed with young professionals that are very well trained to serve these different actions and these different activities, but are also very confident and are also very well convinced that they have to serve these different actions. And the other a point that really makes me very optimistic about the role of the universities in addressing these multi-requirements is the ongoing multi-crisis that we're facing as academics, as universities, as experts in our fields. And these challenges have to do with funding, with underfunding issues, have to do with increasing competition, have to do with the use of AI and how much that interferes with the products that we produce, but most importantly has to do with what I feel is a threat to evidence-based, science-driven thinking. I find that we live in times where the credibility is questioned and the role of the academics and the academic community as a whole is being undermined, intentionally or unintentionally. So I really feel that it's the time when we need to step outside of our comfort zones and our laboratories or our offices where we do research in our isolation and we think that, you know, everybody else understands the world and sees the world as we see it. And we should get out there to protect and to show to the people what do we do, what is the value of our work, and why it makes sense to incorporate the outcomes of our work to policy making, to decision making for the future. And I feel that this is a pressure that many of our fellows and colleagues feel it. So we respond to this pressure by developing those talents, by developing those skills that can enable our work to reach the non-expert audience, to reach the policymakers, to reach people outside of our own disciplines for a sustainable decision-making and for sustainable drafting of the future. So in short, and just to allow time for a meaningful discussion in this panel, what I want to deliver is a firm belief that we can serve all these different targets, is a clear understanding that we show we show that we are able to deliver in all these aspects. For instance, when it comes to my institution and when it comes to my region that I'm representing here. So, for instance, at the National and Capodistrian University of Athens, we have many projects that deliver breakthrough scientific results, but also deliver with regards to policy making or to the connection of the different disciplines. We also have activities that engage young researchers, that engage the society in decision making. For instance, we run the Generation Youth Energy Network that is exactly trying to deliver on these aspects, to develop scientific content, but also to deliver this scientific content in simple terms to non-experts. Beyond Greece and beyond my institution, the region where I'm coming from, the Mediterranean region, has very strong connections among academic institutions and collaborators. I'm very happy to be part in one of these networks, that is the FEMIS, the Forum of the Economic Institutes in the Mediterranean. And what we are trying to do is exactly this, to deliver scientific contributions and solutions to how we can address social, environmental, and economic challenges in the Mediterranean in a way that connects the North-South. So it let's say, make room for getting rid of this North-South divide, for increasing collaboration, and for creating solutions that are understandable and acceptable from both sides of the Mediterranean. So by using these very practical examples that, are based on tangible outputs, I'm very, very confident, and I'm a very proud supporter of the idea that the academic institutions are well positioned to serve innovation for the greater social and economic outcomes in Europe and beyond. And to conclude, let's think that innovation is not just technological innovation. It comes in many different forms. So it has to do with social innovation. It has to do with system innovation. It has to do with disciplinary and interdisciplinary approaches to innovation. And academia and academic institutions, because they have access to these different views, these different insights, these different disciplines and approaches to solving one problem, are very, very well positioned to serve innovation ideas, innovation productions within, but also outside their own systems. So I'll stop my intervention in this panel now, and hopefully I will have the chance to come back again after the colleagues follow. Thank you very much, Thomas.
Well, thanks to you. Very, very visionary outreach, Corley prizes, different kinds of innovation. I think that was, and I can also see, and thanks to the audience also for all the questions that begin to pop up. And please ask questions, vote for questions that you like. And we already have, I think that's a Danish expression, we put in the oven for a very good discussion. But moving on to the next panelist, we have Carlos that comes from many different perspectives, as I said before. So Carlos, please let us hear what your vision is.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas, and the whole association, of course, for the invitation here, for being given the chance to present some ideas at least. I'm going to change gears now towards technology, and let me start off with saying that I'm very pleased to see that innovation and technology did not make the top of the list. And that's odd a little for someone who is a technologist, but it's important to understand that we will probably have no solution without technology, but there is that, I would say, kind of like that widespread belief that technology is going to fix it all. It's going to get us out of the mess that we have brought ourselves into, and that certainly is not right. It's an element of the solution, but it is not the only one. And that's, I think, always important to emphasize. So when it comes to sustainability, then absolutely everything counts in large amounts. I've thrown a couple of numbers here on the slide, and those numbers are just rough numbers, orders of magnitude. I'll just walk you quickly through them. This is the first one, is the amount of tons of plastic garbage in the ocean, so 200 million. Nobody knows exactly how much it is, but it's around about 200 million. You want to compare that with the amount of plastic that philanthropic activities have so far removed from the ocean. You know about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. It's a tiny number by comparison, and that's certainly an effort that is deserves all the credit they have, but it's not going to make a big difference. So much larger activities will be needed. The next number is the number of combustion engines operating in the world. It's mainly cars, but it's not only cars. There are engines as backup power and in factories and whatever. So it's about 2 billion of them. So if you want to replace them with something else, then you have a long way to go. On the electric vehicle side, we're making good progress, but nevertheless, the majority of cars that drives around on this planet or trucks is still powered by fossil fuels. The third number is the 2 teratons, actually that's 2 trillion tons, right, of CO2 that we have emitted as humanity ever since the Industrial Revolution. This is a mind-boggling number. Not all of that ends up in the atmosphere. 2/3 of it goes into the oceans. Some of it ends up in the biosphere as well, but a large portion of it is in the atmosphere and causes the problems that we all know of increased insulation of the back radiation into space, and with that also the warming. The last number is just to illustrate how much energy we are consuming. So this is, we are kind of like called a 20 terawatt society. So 20 trillion watts of permanent power is what we are using if you look at the total power consumption. So what this is meant to emphasize is that if you want to make a difference, you can find niches where a little more sustainability might be profitable and might actually serve a very specific need, but you're not going to make a dent in the major problem. The major problem is these numbers that you're seeing here on the screen. And we have let it come to a point where only big things will make a difference. There is a famous meme, I might call that, of go big or go home, which people in the venture world are using. They didn't mean big in terms of infrastructure. They meant big in terms of business ambition or potential growth curves and hockey sticks and whatnot. But here in sustainability, if you look at young companies trying to set up something that they consider as a potential solution to the problem or a contributor to it, then unless it has a chance of becoming very big and then relatively quickly, it's not even worth investing in. So go big or go home literally holds in the world of sustainability and climate technologies or green tech in general. To illustrate the problem and the challenges, I've put up this picture here with a wind turbine offshore. I mean, you're wondering what that wind turbine does there. First, it's an example of something that became big. So the turbine itself is big and the wind industry is a big industry, but to get there, it took it 40 to 50 years. So that's one of the things to keep in mind. If you want to make a big difference to the state of affairs on a global level, you are counting in decades. So if you want to have a change by 2050, you have to be pretty advanced today already. So something that makes a difference in 2100 might still be welcome, but it doesn't contribute to today's problems, and something that cannot go big enough at all, but remains a niche solution might still be welcome by some people, but again, it's not going to make the big difference. Here's one specific aspect on which I will drill down a little more on the next slide, not yet, but I still stay with this slide here. And that is back in the days when I was in a large corporate, which was also in wind energy, we were quite convinced that when offshore wind turbines became bigger and bigger, that there was a natural limit to how big you could build them. That beyond 10 megawatt, you probably would have to change to a different configuration, namely away from a horizontal rotor to a vertical rotor system. Now, vertical rotor systems only exist in very small dimensions. But we thought that's going to be, from a just physics and engineering standpoint, the better solution. Now, what turned out is those wind turbines, however, are now at around 20 megawatt offshore and still growing. Now, A, you underestimate how good a technology can become over time, but B, it is very, very hard at that scale to change the paradigm. So if you are in research or in technology development and you want to make a contribution to the energy production from wind, you will probably have to look at the current design as it is and do something that can change the current design to make it somewhat better. On the material side, control side, maybe gearboxes, whatever it is, if it's a drop-in solution to the existing configuration, it's welcome. If it requires a radical redesign of the solution, it's probably very, very hard to get that ever deployed in practice. So when we think about many ideas having stalled and not progressing much, that is part of the problem. That scaling up something from scratch takes a long, long time, and the given incumbent design is the one that actually needs the support rather than something radically new. If we move on to the next slide, I want to illustrate that a little more. Can I move? Here we go. Right. So which I here call the clean tech dilemma, because this session here is about dilemmas. And so you find yourself, if you move into clean tech with an idea, or maybe you are an entrepreneur, or you're a technologist, or you're a researcher, and you want to say, oh, this is an area I would love to contribute to, you find yourselves on the horns of a dilemma. And I mean, a dilemma often depicted as a bull with two horns. You can either go the path on the left, which is the path of tried and trusted technologies, or you can go the path to the right, which is you go into a novel and unproven territory. Let me first stay with the tried and trusted. What's the advantage of that? First and foremost, the advantage is what you do need to do it, not in all its details, but in principle, is available at scale. If you're using a specific catalytic process, tried and trusted means a catalyst for that process is available. It may not be the perfect catalyst, but there is one available. So it means initially you can build something and it's kind of affordable. There's nothing exotic in it. Your technology risk is lower in that case, obviously, because it is tried and trusted. But the disadvantage is the potential for this solution to be breakthrough, very low cost, disruptive or whatever is very limited. Because all you take is what is there already. You just kind of like it's a box full of Lego bricks that you put them together in new ways, but the bricks are a given. Contrast that to what's on the other side when you go the path of novel and unproven, right? The problem is you have to scale it up somehow, and someone needs to do that. What you have in the lab is fine as a proof of concept potentially, but to make a difference, you have to have it produced in large volumes, or else it just stays a niche solution. So who's going to do that? You got to think that one through. Since it's tailor-made and unique, it's kind of prototyping of some sort, prototypes in the material development or in system design. So that by design is very costly. Think of the automotive industry. If you have a new car, the first prototype of it may easily cost you $1 million. Even if the serious car later on in mass production is just going to be sold at 15K or 20K. Prototyping is inherently expensive. You do have to take a higher technology risk. For a venture, you might say that's quite normal, but the big advantage that you do have is it has potentially, if it all pans out as you hoped for, it potentially has much higher potential in the long run. So in a sense, you got to pick. Either you're going down the path to the left and have something to show for relatively quickly, or you go the path to the right and what you have is exciting lab results, but potentially no commercial outlet. There's no way of getting it done in the practice. If you look at climate tech in particular, so in space, which I know very well is carbon removal from the atmosphere, and you look through the various companies doing it, you will see that basically everybody on this domain sits on the left. There's almost nothing to the right. So if you are interested in working in this space or contributing to it as an academic, as a university institution, right, the best contribution you can make is to bring a better component into an system that is today based on tried and trusted hardware, rather than coming up with a radically new way of doing it that requires a completely different configuration and where you will outside the lab struggle to get any traction at all, because people will shy away from the large expenses that will be incurred if they try to build production systems or set up first prototypes out in the field. Risk and high cost would keep them, I would say, at least reluctant to support you. On the left, however, you have companies that are more willing to embrace the new things that you might do. With that, Thomas, I hand over back to you.
Thank you very much, Carlos, and thanks for bringing that time dimension into it as well. This fact that we don't have unending time for new and disruptive technologies, and that might actually pose a challenge to universities. But we can take all that up in the discussion. Now let's move to Cornelis and that institutional perspective from Delft in the Netherlands. Please, Cornelis.
Yes, thank you. Good morning to all of you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share some of the experience of Delft University of Technology. Experience with bringing clean tech, in this case sustainable energy technology, to the campus. I'll walk you through our pathway and share some of the lessons we learned. Delft University of Technology is strong in sustainable energy research. We are organized in a number of institutes, which you see here, but there is a lot beyond that still. We totally have over 1,000 researchers working in this area, and that means we are we are among the large research organizations in the European Union. And we cover most of the areas of sustainable energy, supply, demand, systems, policy, etc. And that of course provides a good starting point for the work that we are doing in this space and how we want to develop it. Further, on top of that, also climate change, both mitigation and adaptation is an important area of research. The university board already 7 years ago defined a target for Delft University of Technology. We are not only doing research, but also what you could call practice what you preach, or practice what you investigate and develop. The aim would be we should be in 2030 a CO2 neutral and circular campus. And of course that is in very generic terms, but we worked on it along the lines that I show in this slide here. First of all, to cut energy consumption in half. And we started working on that, and we looked, okay, how is energy used and how is controlled? And we found out that it is controlled by building management systems, and these are very difficult to control and to optimize. That gives a kind of a technology lock-in, which is difficult to change. So that brought me to take the initiative within the university to develop a project called Brains for Buildings. And the project was aimed at, okay, how can we change this control of building energy use how can we control it in a different way, making use of artificial intelligence. And that was developed into a 4-year research project, of which we see now the results upcoming. And of course, this is a first step to see how it can be done differently, but it's a nice way of how you see, okay, how problems that you encounter in practical development can lead to research projects. So that is one of the lessons that we learned. Okay, if you start doing these things, start developing, bringing the technology to the campus itself, you see where the problems are, and this gives you to one of that gives you an angle. Okay, where should our research go? An important thing that we also learned in further developing these targets in interaction with the university facility management, is that you have two different ways of operation. Say the facility management of European University is very much project-based. They want to go somewhere and then you develop a plan and you have targets, timelines. And researchers work in a completely different way. They are much more open. If there is an interesting new avenue, they go there and develop completely different targets, much more looking for the interesting stuff, trial and error. So that was also a lesson that we had to learn and still are learning. How do you bring these two things together, the facility management and the researchers? So that's an important second lesson. As I showed in the previous slide, the second one is, okay, how can we actually support our university with energy from renewable sources? And one of the big things that we developed is a geothermal heat project. And interesting is, this was the original conception of the idea came from a student association. So that's also a third lesson. These students are still involved it's very important to say one of the important things is listen to the students on the one hand. We have an entire organization for that, but also the students will learn from it. And if they are in an environment, they see this happening, this will also be inspiring. In this case, students were from the mining faculty, in the past very much focused, very much related to fossil fuel exploration and production, but they want to develop new avenues. In between, we have developed substantial capacity in geothermal energy research. The project that we are developing is now operational. It is intended to provide all the heat for the campus, but also beyond that. Say it's also delivering heat to the city, to parts of the city of Delft. And that also shows how you run into additional issues. Developing a project, developing technology is already hard enough. But next to that, you need to, you run into all kinds of organizational problems, contractual issues, problems of timing, different time scales of different users. So developing a project not only learns you a lot, and because this is really, say, this geothermal energy project, not a simple project, it's stuffed with measuring equipment. So for the researchers, it's kind of a gold mine of data. But it also learns you a lot. Okay, how are these projects being developed, and what do you learn with from the practical implementation? At the same time, we are also developing solar energy on campus. Our solar energy research group has the ambition to apply solar energy on every surface, and we are also trying to step by step develop that on campus. The final point is that when we investigated it further, we found out that our greenhouse gas emissions are partly from our energy use. You see it here, the blue part, which is natural gas. The small piece is electricity, and that has to do that we generate most of the electricity ourselves from a cogeneration unit. But you see there are a lot of other parts that play a role. Building and construction is an important one, our equipment, but many other parts. Business travel is relatively modest, was smaller than I expected, but in total we found out that 80% of our total carbon footprint is from indirect. So for the embodied carbon in all the stuff that we buy and that we use. So one of the things that we have that is following up on this research, this was also a research project that we look, okay, how can it be, how can we organize our purchasing process in a different way, so that we take it so that we minimize the carbon footprint. For example, for buildings, we are trying to do that too. If we ask building companies for bids, we do not only ask for the price, which in the past was dominant, but also for, okay, what's the carbon footprint of the building that you're going to deliver. And we developed an internal carbon price. We have a carbon price of €150 per ton, and that plays a role in the decision about which supplier we choose. Basically, if you see all this, we have living labs on campus, as it's now often called. And living labs is a fuzzy concept, but some important elements. It's something real life. There is interaction with the users, but with everyone involved. And basically, the things that we described, that I described, you could consider it to some extent as living labs. we want to take that a bit further, and the sustainability leader of our university came up with the idea, okay, our entire campus should be a living lab. So if you look at these axes, you have on the one hand the coordination, the interaction between projects, and on the other hand, the co-creation. So what is the interaction with users and others involved? And then if you combine if you have small things, you have living labs on campus, but the campus as a living lab takes that step further. So this idea was further elaborated. Again, you see this interaction between facilities and research in a PhD thesis, where the candidate described how such living lab on campus should be developed and how it can be coordinated in cooperation. And she did that in cooperation with several other universities that were also involved in the concept. So to conclude, this should really be considered as a long-term vision. We are developing, but we are surely not there. Yet it is clear that just connecting research to sustainability already is very helpful. It has a lot of added value compared to pure technology development on campus. And we definitely want to pursue this trajectory further. Thank you.
Well, many thanks to you, and thanks for bringing it down to this very concrete what can be done on campus. I like the problem leads to research, which is the other way than often is described, that researchers come up with a brilliant idea and then you can solve problems with that. But it's much more intertwined, those two. So again, to the audience, many thanks for the questions. Before we dive into them, I just wanted to go through the panel and see what that's a poll again, and see what comments you had from what you heard from one another. So we can just take the same way as we did before, and Stella, what do you think in terms of what you heard here? To me, it corresponds quite well with your broad vision.
Sorry, Thomas, I heard the first part of the question. Can you please repeat again so I get the
entire question? If you have comments on what you heard from the other speakers.
No, I think it's an excellent evidence of what I said in my introduction, that academic institutions and the people serving these institutions have the skills, the means, and the willingness to contribute to specific issues that our societies and our economies are facing. So from Carlos' presentation, we saw, how we can contribute to very practical questions that have to do with the size and the level of technological innovation that we have and we need in order to address pressing challenges related to climate change, and to how technological advancements can address this. And from the second presentation, we saw how the institutions nowadays transform into ecosystems that serve this need to address challenges with a multidisciplinary perspective. And it's really important to see these contributions and developments, and to realize that as societies and as economies, we need two things in parallel. We need solutions that are attractive for investors. They are marketable, they work well, and they pay off whoever has to be paid off for these investments. But at the same time, they can serve greater purposes that address externalities, that address social issues that are well beyond the profitability of companies and projects.
Excellent. Yes, indeed. Carlos.
Yeah, so to both, both what Stella and Cornelio said, let me comment by taking it a slightly higher level. We all have witnessed, from our own studies, in my case, ages ago, of course, to what I do see at schools today. Specialization and the formation of silos has been taken to extremes. And maybe there was a demand for it in the work market, and people said like, well, I'm going to hire someone who has very specialized knowledge, and I don't want to waste time on educating people on A or B or C, right? Universities can probably take care of that with a broader set of classes that people can take and more study courses and so on. Now, the challenge we're having today is that we got to get out of those silos very quickly, and universities can not only say, I have the specialized know-how to pass on, but I also have the opportunity to kind of like have the umbrella knowledge provided. And a living lab, like at a university, brings it all together. It's very tangible. I always felt it interesting already when I was a student, and people who had these groups like that were building rockets or building cars or whatever, that already within engineering tied different disciplines together. And you saw that in the application, it looks really different than if you just look at it on paper or if you just stay in your own silo. And the same is true for the broader context. So societal context, when you take the humanities into the picture and so on. I do think that that is a key requirement that universities, at least for that part of the population that they reach, right, that they are able to provide the bigger context and make sure that people leave the university with good judgment on where do we stand, what can happen, what have I seen, what have I learned from what I saw, rather than what have I learned from the books I was reading or from the PowerPoint presentations I was given.
Excellent. So really this transdisciplinarity, getting out of the silos, and real transdisciplinarity across social science, humanities, technology. Excellent. And Cornelis.
Yes, thank you also for both other presentations. Obviously, it's very important that we take up our communication role. Nevertheless, I also see, as especially Stella said it out, nevertheless, I see challenges. Take, for example, the operation of a power system. And many people say, lay people say, wind and solar are nice, but you have these times that the sun is not shining, the wind is not blowing. So how can that work? And if I'm giving a lecture and I give a course, I can explain to the students and they will understand. And of course, I agree with the people in the poll saying education is important, but how to bring such concepts to a broader audience when people always talk in simple bits, I think that is still a big challenge. But I don't know how to do that all, but that is also we need to work on these complex things, like the complexity of the climate system, for example. Well, what I was, I found the presentation of Carlos very enlightening, and I recognize a lot of these things, having worked on both in academia and the corporate world. But one of the big challenges is that we bring that message also across to academia. I don't know what your experience is, but I think many people do not work do not think in these terms, that they go big or go home, but especially the value of tried and trusted technology. So there is very good things, but it also shows there is still a lot of work for us to do, especially in this communication area.
Yeah, and that was one of Stella's point from the beginning, that the
Sure.
role of communication. Absolutely. Good. As I said, we have many good questions on the Q&A. It's by no means closed, so if you sit with a question or something that comes into mind, a comment, you're more than welcome to put it there, and you're of course also very welcome to vote for questions from other people. But we have one that goes quite in the direction of the things we've just seen, from Maria Spiliotopoulou, and that is about preparing students for the socio-ecological transition. So systems thinking, critical thinking, resilience, etc. I will just put it up to the screen here so that everybody can see it. So it's much more than raising awareness. It's about that socio-ecological transition. And if I can sort of interpret this, there's a lot of emphasis on the social in this. And And that is something that we often see. I think that the capacity to say not only sort of behavioral change in terms of letting your washing machine wash when there's sun, but sort of greater societal transition. It's not something we talk a lot about as far as I can see, but I might be wrong. And maybe it's also one of these high potential, high risk discussions that Carlos talked about. So it's an excellent question. I'm looking forward to see what you have to say on this. I don't know if somebody wants to start. Otherwise, I'll give it to some of you.
And then the others can chime in. That's a hell of a question, of course. So I'll take one angle. There's many angles for this. Raising awareness is fundamentally pointing out to the challenges and say, like, something got to be done about it, right? I mean, rather than saying, like, here is a solution. Right? I think that's one thing which is important. You can also, of course, say, like, here are options for solutions, but use your own thinking, your own critical thinking, which was emphasized as well, right, to figure out which path to go. A closer preparation can very quickly slide into politics. So this is what we need to do as a society. And we have seen that over the years that, like, listen to the science has become a slogan at both ends, right? For the ones that say, like, there's a truth, go after it. And the other ones say, like, it's not science, it's politics, it's agitation. It's difficult. So I'd say, yes, the preparation in the sense of laying down the options and explaining the context and how things do fit together is important. But if it's too prescriptive, I think it actually would be hard to convey to the students. They say, like, well, if you think it's all that easy, why don't you do it? Right. So I would say anyway, but just one aspect. I'll leave to the others to comment as well.
Yes, thanks.
If I may jump in, Thomas. I think it's a very interesting question, and there's no one answer to this, but I understand that if we overpromise and we say that, okay, we know the problem, we know the solutions, and this is what we have to do, yes, indeed, we become very prescriptive, and it's not our role. But on the other hand, I think that scientists sometimes, because we know the limitations of our work, and we are aware of those, and we are aware of the ethics that describe our work and should describe our work, and how much clear and transparent we have to be about the limitations of our work. I think that sometimes we put too much emphasis on the limitations rather than on the ability that our work delivers with regards to addressing problems. Probably there is not one single answer or best answer to the problems we're facing, but I'm pretty sure that our community has some very good solutions and pathways to offer. So I agree that we need not just to raise awareness, but we should be proactive in discussing openly with our audiences the alternative solutions we have at reach. What are the limitations? What are their advantages? And let them do then the choice. But I think that, yes, it's a good time right now, and it's not just an opportunity, it's a requirement for the scientific community and for the academia to be a bit more bold about the work that is being done within academic institutions and what is the real usefulness of this work.
So what I hear from you is really be bold, don't be shy, but still keeping a very analytical approach, not sliding into what Carlos said about being overly political, but saying here are the costs, here are the benefits. We can do that in a rational, evidence-based manner, and that's a job as well. Great, Cornelius, you raised your hand on this.
Yeah, just a few things. Say one of the things that we have at our university is that we have, and probably many universities will have, that we have dedicated faculty, which is my faculty, the Faculty of Technology, Policy and Management, which has much more a systems thinking approach, and that also all the other faculties are engineering type of faculties, but also there you have these, and we give education there. And what I also found, what I found out that students find very interesting is something that we organized now in recent years, where we work together with a big consultancy company working in the area of energy, and they do a kind of a summer school. It's not in summer, but they a few weeks they are working with this company. They are working on real life problems. They bring all their expertise from many different disciplines, but seeing how the world works and what challenges there are in developing, for example, energy systems. The consultancy company likes it, but the students find it awful.
Students find it awful.
Yeah, they find it terrific. Maybe that's a better word.
Okay.
Yeah, they like it so. They like it very much. It's one of the best experiences they have.
Yeah, but and both you and Stella said this, that the students are often a driving force for the sustainability activities on campus. Good.
They can be a driving force, and we should make use of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned tools like challenge-based learning, which also for us comes up often when we ask about what is really a good learning innovation. Good. I will go to the next question here, and I'll just put it on display about the collaboration with industry and the alignment between the two. And if it happens that sustainability priorities are not aligned, and I can just comment from Brussels that at the moment the big discussion in the European sphere is, of course, deregulation and sort of making sustainability reporting, if not non-existent, then a lot less onerous, and you get the feeling that sustainability is a impediment for business. But I might just start with you again, Cornelis, because you mentioned your collaboration with companies. How do you see this? Is this an issue? Can it be an issue?
No. Yeah. Okay. Let it be clear. Say that, in the world of companies, there is a lot of variety. Say some companies are very proactive when it comes to climate and clean tech, and there are also companies that are hesitant. And I think there are so many companies, good companies that you can work with. So there is not a shortage. Say also you mentioned one of my other activities is a science-based targets initiative, something that is now accepted by nearly 10,000 companies in the world. There are so many companies that you can have a good interaction with, and it's very good to do that. And we and probably many other universities have that. Nevertheless, there will be discussions, and we also have them in the Netherlands and also on our university, whether to what extent we should work with companies that still give priority to fossil fuel development, like several of the big oil companies. And that's also, again, students are very much driving this discussion, and I think it's a good discussion to have.
Yeah. And Carlos, you come from that side yourself. How does a question like that sound to you?
Yeah, so I mean, that's a home run, the questions in this case. Yes, absolutely. It depends on the university where you are. I would say technical universities have naturally much closer collaborations with industry across a variety of topics. It could be in healthcare, it could be in materials, it could be in engineering systems, and so on. So that would be you would be praying to the converted in a sense. There is indeed the question of are there companies, the way they do their business, that you rather keep a distance from because you don't want to get tainted. Your reputation might be at stake if you work with them too closely, but that's also a function of time. Just let's think about defense, that for many years was kind of like, was you didn't want to be associated with defense, and all of a sudden in Europe, right, war comes closer and defense becomes something which is much more respectable all of a sudden. So things may change over time, but fundamentally, yes, I guess universities that have not engineering disciplines or computer science disciplines may be naturally a little more distant from the industry, and they may wonder, like, should we get closer? I can only recommend to do so, since if you want to make a difference in the real world, right, you have to talk to the people who actually implement the solutions. and stand behind the products and service them and push them out of the factories. If you don't do that, you might sometimes have a patent that someone is interested in. It's not impossible. But I guess the much bigger lever is if you work with those who are actually the ones who deploy.
Yeah. Stella, do you want to come in on this as well? You mentioned ecosystems before.
Absolutely. I'm coming from the Department of Economic Sciences and with a social sciences background here. So usually we're not the departments or the disciplines that someone would bring first at mind if talking about collaboration between academic institutions and industry. However, what the latest transition and technological innovation is showing us is, and I'm referring to the green and energy transition, what it shows is that, if the people do not accept technological innovations, and if they don't understand how these technologies and how this transition impacts their lives, they don't accept it. For instance, with the wind turbines, you have not in my backyard effects. You have people not accepting these solutions, although they know that they relate to clean energy solutions. They don't accept them because they feel that, they don't get a fair share of the returns. They get environmental and social negative impacts from these technologies. So what this transition is showing us is that if you don't have social sciences in support of this transition, if you don't have behavioral aspects integrated into analysis, then implementation and adoption of new technologies may be more costly or even retarded significantly, with whatever that means on the returns on the investments or on the timely implications of or the timely implementation of policies. So again, coming from a discipline that is not the first to consider when we talk about collaboration between academia and industry, I would say that this is absolutely necessary. It goes well beyond the technical disciplines and the technical departments. It is essential, important, and is also something that makes the best use of taxpayers' money, because as again, I will return to this key advantage of universities, that they bring together disciplines, knowledge, networks that are not necessarily paid by the industry, but are very, very important to implementing industrial solutions, to implementing technological innovations, and to reap as much as possible from the benefits of this innovation and these solutions and these investments that go well beyond the returns that we see for companies or investors. Go at a social level, at an economic level. They consider the externalities that go well beyond the returns at an individual, at the business and an industry level.
So we're back to that potential for holistic analysis that you also said before, which is indeed what universities are quite good at. We have a much more, let's say, a concrete question here about the dilemmas universities face today, and I'll just put it on here again. So what would you say they are shortly? Financial sustainability, is it the environmental sustainability, or is it the academic freedom, which is of course a bigger issue generally in these days? I mean, Stella, you can just continue with that, and then if other people want to chip in.
Thank you, Thomas, and very good questions indeed received from the audience. I'm not sure whether these are dilemmas or real challenges in the ground. I will refer to only those written in the question. I find there are many more out there, but first, when we talk about financial sustainability, we need to understand that when we talk about higher education, simple cost-benefit analysis and simple financial sustainability is not enough. We need to go well beyond that, well beyond the numbers of what we put in and what we get out of the universities in terms of something that is ready to be marketed and ready to be scaled up. Environmental sustainability, very, very important, and in this regard, higher academic institutions can serve this role from a dual perspective. First, as ecosystems that can implement sustainability, environmental sustainability, so they can propose solutions on how a society or a network can change practices to deploy environmental sustainability in everyday actions. That is one thing. And the other thing is that we prepare the next generations, we shape the public dialogue with regards to environmental sustainability practices, so we can serve this as an end target. Now, academic freedom is a very, very important challenge that we face right now. It shouldn't be a dilemma for those serving academic institutions, but unfortunately, when your ability to deliver to your family, your ability to have a job, and to care for those people that in the end of the day you have to care for may lower our own incentives to serve academic freedom. We see that. We see our colleagues in the US right now, what they are faced with, how they have to rephrase their research focus. For instance, gender issues are no longer in the table, or even environmental sustainability as a title may no longer be attractive. So academic freedom is something that has to be cared for, has to be protected. In the end of the day, served by academics at different ranks, but we should not undermine the ability of the individuals to protect and serve academic freedom. Here, we require, and it is required, an institutional level support of academic freedom. Real, tangible, concrete, strong enough. So academic freedom, very, very important, but it has to be supported and it has to be ensured at an institutional level. Don't expect from the individual serving academia to be there to serve this target at full speed and power.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very strong call. Carlos and Cornelis, do you want to chip in on this question as well?
Yes.
You get that, Cornelis.
Okay. Now, first of all, in the Netherlands at the moment, financial sustainability is a big thing because we have serious budget cuts by the still current government. But in general, if I say what is the biggest challenge, then I would say it would to really look for impact, and it would be great if say everyone wants to have impact, right? Also any researcher, and researchers should have a freedom to investigate anything they find important. But it would be good if researchers much more would internalize the type of lessons that Carlos taught us in his presentation. So how can you really have impact? I think that would be an important thing. Say the tagline of Delft University is impact for a better society, but to make this work is still another thing.
Yeah. So also the core of EUA's message on academic freedom, it's a freedom, but it's also responsibility.
Yeah, right.
Carlos.
Yeah, so maybe I can add a couple of thoughts on that. Following up what Cornelis said, impact, very important. I mean, the questions in times of tight purses, the question of why am I giving you money is going to be asked much more often. And it's not enough to say, I graduate so many students in so many disciplines, and they kind of like find all jobs. Good, fine, all right, that's your base function that you have, but you're getting money on top of that. So, and what government funding can do to bring universities in line at the risk of them going extinct is what we will see on the other side of the Atlantic right now. Right? It's not that you say like, I tell you what you need to do, but you just say like, if you don't do what I do, then maybe you don't need my funding anymore. And our universities in Europe, by and large, are all funded by governments. Now, so far, governments have behaved. Said like, I'm not going to touch it for a variety of reasons. But again, if money gets tighter, and it will, I don't think we will see years where all of a sudden economic growth is going to be a wellspring of money that flows into the academic sector again, right? It's going to get tighter. So how do we position ourselves as academic institutions vis-a-vis the government? How do we demonstrate and how do we define impact? Also maybe in a way that society understands. And what does that do for the discussion with the entities that are going to give us the money to do the work we want to do? So I think that is a huge question for the future. The environmental sustainability is, I would say it's something which, if it's operational for the university, is a job to be done. under financial constraints might be difficult to actually do it right. But at the same time, I guess, I mean, if this permeates the curricula and the work the university does, then that is in itself an important contribution. And I think it's going to be recognized as that.
Yeah. Good. We have time for a couple of more questions, and Stella was hinting at sort of the global, the geopolitical situation, and we have one here from Niels Bertram. How can clean tech ventures reduce their structural dependence on policy support? Which conditions within Europe help them build resilience and scale, and where do policy and market headwinds slow progress compared to the United States and China? So a big question about policy support in general and policy support in the global perspective, which are two things we often see connected. So I'll just throw that out there, and who wants to comment on that?
So I can get started. Since this goes to the heart of the matter, I don't know how Niels looks at it. There is, in fact, in my view, there is no clean tech without policy support. Just look back in history. How have renewables come into existence? It was not by philanthropists or kind of like dedicated companies who said, I'm going to buy a certain amount of clean green energy now at whatever price. It was actually mechanisms that governments had implemented. But you don't even have to go there. You can start with anything around environmental protection, right? Particulate filters, DeNOx in power plants, the ban of lead in gasoline and whatever. None of that would have happened without government saying, like, this is no longer acceptable. You can no longer do this. I mean, we have a whole series of combustion engine regulation that brought them from very high pollutant to Euro 4, 5, 6 or whatever further down. It's all policy action. So being kind of like sustainable, in some cases, the clean tech piece may be the cheaper one. So when people talk about the green, kind of like the green discount, in most cases, however, we talk about the green premium. And that does not in itself kind of like win in the marketplace, except for some niches. And then it's actually, I think, more corporate social responsibility than really just the magic of the market. So I'd say if you look at the examples that were successful, government is all over it. In China in particular, in the US, in my view, is probably similar to Europe, maybe a little less so. It depends a little bit on what you specifically look at, but it's not fundamentally different from things here.
Yeah, you're nodding, Stella.
I completely agree with Carlos. I find that it's very important, the role of policies in leading transitions. But I would like also to highlight the importance of mentality setting and understanding of the longer term progress and process that companies, clean tech, ventures, investors should keep in mind. Policies are important for the transformation, for the transition from one technology state to another, from one state to another, a socioeconomic state, environmental state. What is important and can ensure long-term sustainability and survival is transformation. So clean tech ventures, related activities, they need to understand what is the role of policies in the transition process, but they have to be prepared also at the same time for their transformation in the long term. And they need to develop strategies, credible strategies, viable strategies, strategies with clear financial returns related to their transformation. So I would say that, you know, if they keep in mind these two things, policy support for the transition, but then self ability to survive in the transformation process.
Yes, so it's not only the policy support, but there's also the responsibility from all the stakeholders to think about the transition. We still have a little bit of time, so Cornelis, if you want to
nothing to add, thank you.
You're fine. Okay, then we have one, but I think I will ask that directly to you, Cornelis. How can we balance rapid technological innovation with long-term environmental sustainability when many new technologies increase energy consumption? And I suppose that here we talk about things like generative AI, that is a big energy consumer. So you coming from that field, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I would, of course, AI, the consumption of AI globally is growing quite rapidly. The consumption of data centers, but still it's a very small fraction of the total electricity consumption, and even smaller if you look at the total energy consumption. Actually, in both in Europe and the US, electricity consumption is particular, but energy consumption in general is decreasing over the years. So that's and it can and it should decrease even faster. Also, when we look at universities, say most of the of a substantial part of energy consumption of universities is for basic things like heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, and that is while we use buildings more efficiently, it's not increasing so rapidly. So that's it's actually not increasing at all. So it's not so much of a concern. The main concern is how can we avoid all kind of unnecessary energy consumption? How can we make things more efficient, and how can we supply the energy with renewable sources? But it's all doable. It's probably as I showed, it's in the end only a small part of a carbon footprint. And it's much more difficult to make changes in the other 80%.
Right. Okay. Good point. And still on the technological optimistic side.
Sure.
We're nearing the end. I don't want to cut Carlos or Stella off. If you want to have a comment on this particular question.
Yeah, just really quick. I mean, two quick points, I guess. First, I totally agree with what Cornelis said. Also, as the second other point is what kind of energy are we consuming? That matters. So if I just look at my terawatt hours, it doesn't say whether it's coal or whether it's wind. So that's, I think, an important piece of it. And then the other thing is, there is this famous Jevons paradox. So you do invest in improving energy efficiency of devices only to see that energy consumption grows, because now it becomes more affordable for more people, and hence they'll buy it, and hence they'll use something that they wouldn't have used in the past, no matter how efficient it is. So it's not in the technology as such, but it's actually in the utilization patterns where it sits in. This is very hard to predict from the get-go, right? So if I say, like, I have a great idea on AI, it's not baked into it that energy consumption is going to go through the roof. Not at all, not in any way. It depends on how we adopt it. So these two things go hand in hand, I guess. The piece of technology in itself, the kind of energy supply that there is available, and ultimately what society does with technology. And if you're standing at the very beginning of that chain, it's kind of hard to predict what's going to come out at the other end. So far, it's true in history, it always ended up with higher energy consumption on a global level. That much is true.
Yeah, but no longer in the United States and Europe. It's decreasing. The Jevons paradox exists, but say many of the energy consumption many of the energy consumption categories have saturated in those countries, and efficiency improvement is strong and takes over, leads to a decreasing demand at the moment.
Good. Stella, do you want to have a last
quick jump in, Thomas? Again, a reminder of the dual role of universities. We are both consumers, but also producers of solutions. So we can serve on both aspects. First, we can reconsider the consumption patterns of institutions, and how we promote efficiency, conservation, or use of energy. But also at the same time, we are solution providers. We can be solution providers. We can contribute to efficiency improvements, to energy saving attitudes and behaviors and technologies. And of course, because we have this ability to understand the different positions of countries, of regions, of industrial players, of societies, we can offer tailored solutions. It's not that, you know, one solution fits all and serves all. In some places we may need energy efficiency improvements, in other places we may need a greater renewable energy technologies deployment, and the universities and the people serving universities and the research done within the universities can serve this work to identify specific needs and specific interventions that in the end of the day can lead to a sustainable energy consumption pattern.
Excellent, good last words. We're very close to the end, so I won't use a lot of time on summarizing, but I think first of all that this was extremely enjoyable, and I hope that both the panelists and the audience enjoyed it as much as I did. I could go on. And those were really excellent contributions, so thank you very, very much for that. I think personally, as a takeaway, you can, just from a discussion like this, glimpse the complexity of the issue, the societal complexity, the complexity in behavior, the potential of technological solutions, but probably not by themselves. I think there was a great deal of optimism at the end of the day in the room, despite of the big challenges that we have. And that is of course for EUA a very nice thing to end on, to say, well, if you have problems that are multifaceted, that are complex, well, what better institutions than universities to grasp with these problems? So many thanks. This was very, very enjoyable, very exciting. I think led to a lot of new thoughts, which is the best outcome that you can have. And so I wish all of you a good day, a continued good day, and I hope to see you in other EUA sustainability activities. Otherwise, we of course have all the reports that I hinted at to enjoy if you want to dive into things. So thank you very much, and have a good day, everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you all. Bye-bye.